The hook. The deep silence of space stretched like an endless ocean. A single human ship moved slowly between the stars, carrying one traveler far from home. He was an explorer, searching for new paths, new worlds, and sometimes just for answers. The stars outside his window looked calm, but inside his mind he felt the weight of loneliness. He had not spoken to another voice for many days. Then, without warning, his ship's radio cracked with sound. At first it was only static, a broken noise like whispers lost in the wind. But then, he heard words, soft, trembling, filled with fear. It was not the voice of any human, it was the voice of a child. "Please, is anyone there? Please save my mother," the voice cried. The man froze. A child, in deep space? How could that be possible? He listened again, and the small, broken voice repeated, "Please, help. She will die. Only you can save her." The explorer felt his chest tighten. This was no ordinary distress signal. He had heard many calls for help in his career, from traders, from lost ships, from soldiers. But this voice carried something more. It carried raw fear. It carried innocence. And it carried desperation that pierced through the cold vacuum of space. He leaned closer to the radio and spoke. "Who are you? Where are you?" There was a pause. Then the child's voice returned. I am not like you. I am not human. But I know only a human can save her. Please, will you help?" The explorer's blood ran cold. An alien child, speaking to him, begging for his mother's life. He tried to steady his breathing. This was first contact in its purest form. No diplomats, no armies, no scientists. Just a single child calling out in fear. He asked, "Why me? Why a human?" The answer came with a shiver in the child's voice. "Because no one else can. The others tried, but they failed. Only a human can do what is needed. Please hurry. She is dying." The explorer looked out the window at the endless stars. He felt the weight of choice pressing on him. Was this a trap? Or was this the most important call he would ever answer? His hand hovered above the controls. If he followed the signal, he could be walking into danger. But if he ignored it, a mother would die and a child would be left alone in the galaxy. He thought of Earth, of children crying in the night, of mothers holding them close. The sound of the alien child was no different from any human child. It was the same sound of fear and love, and he knew he could not turn away. "Guide me," he said firmly into the radio. "Tell me where you are, and I will come." The child gasped, almost in relief. A small sob echoed through the speakers. Then the voice whispered coordinates, a location far from the explorer's path, a broken world on the edge of forgotten space, a place no human had ever visited. The explorer set his course. Engines roared softly as the ship turned. The stars shifted outside his window, and his heart beat faster with each passing moment. As he traveled, he kept listening to the faint voice. Sometimes the child whispered to their mother. Sometimes the child simply cried. Each sound pulled the human deeper into the mystery. What had hurt the mother? Why could no other alien save her? And why, out of all the beings in the galaxy, did the child believe in humans? The hours stretched long, but the explorer did not rest. He stayed awake, watching the stars. Each one felt like an eye staring back at him, judging his choice, testing his courage. Was humanity truly special? Could he prove that humans were different? The questions burned inside him. Finally, his ship neared the ruined world. From above, it looked broken, scarred by fire and war. Dark clouds swirled over its surface. Lightning flashed across poisoned skies. This was no safe place for life. And yet somewhere down there a child waited and a mother fought for breath. The explorer's heart pounded as he prepared to land. He whispered to himself, "Only a human can save her. Only a human." The words felt heavy, like destiny calling. He did not know what awaited him on the surface, but he knew this was only the beginning of something far greater than himself. The ship entered the storm, shaking as winds tore against the hull. The child's voice grew louder in the radio, desperate and urgent. "Hurry! She does not have much time." Please, human, please. The explorer gritted his teeth and guided the ship through the chaos. He would not fail this child. He would not let their mother die. And as the ship descended into the unknown, one truth burned brighter than the storm outside. This was not just a rescue. This was the start of a story where humanity's true strength would be tested, and only a human could answer the cry of an alien child. First contact. The human's ship cut. Through the storm-filled sky, shaking with every gust of alien wind, dark clouds swirled like living shadows, and lightning cracked across the heavens. It was a world scarred by pain, a world that carried the marks of battles long forgotten. The explorer gripped the controls, his eyes sharp with focus, his heart heavy with the weight of what waited below. A child's voice guided him through the storm. Not far now, please. Follow the beacon, follow my signal. Each word was trembling, filled with both fear and hope, and the explorer pressed forward, unwilling to fail. At last, the ship broke through the thick clouds and descended onto the surface. The land stretched. Out in ruins, broken cities half buried in ash, towers leaning like the bones of giants long dead. The ground cracked with rivers of glowing fire, and the air itself shimmered with strange, toxic energy. This was not a place meant for life, and yet life was here, clinging to survival in the shadows of destruction. The explorer landed his ship on a flat piece of ground near the source of the signal. Engines roared to silence, leaving only the howl of the storm and the beating of his own heart. He rose, sealed his helmet, and stepped into the alien world. The air was thick and heavy, carrying the smell of burning metal and ash. Each step echoed in the silence of the ruins. Each step carried him closer to the unknown. Then he heard it. A faint cry carried on the wind. It was not a machine's echo, not a ghost of this broken world. It was the voice of a child. Soft, weak, desperate. Here. I'm here. The explorer's chest tightened as he followed the sound. Through broken stone, through shattered metal, he climbed over ruins until at last he saw a figure. It was small, crouched near the remains of a fallen wall. The figure lifted its head, and for the first time the human looked into the face of the alien child. The child's eyes were wide, shining with tears that glowed faintly in the dim light. Their skin was pale with a faint blue tint, marked with delicate patterns that looked almost like stars across their cheeks. Thin arms trembled as they reached out, their voice cracked, filled with raw emotion. You came. A human really came. Human, really. The explorer stood frozen, staring in silence. This was not a creature of nightmare, not a monster, not an enemy. This was a child, fragile, lost, afraid. A child who looked at him not with fear of humans, but with desperate hope. He knelt down, slowly keeping his voice calm. I heard your call. I came as fast as I could. Where is your mother? The child's lips quivered, and their small hands clenched together as though to hold back tears. She is hurt. Badly, the others tried to help, but nothing worked. They told me only you can save her. The explorer frowned beneath his helmet. Only humans? What power could humans hold that others did not? And yet, the child's eyes burned with belief as though the human before them was the last light in a universe of darkness. Take me to her, the explorer said firmly. We don't have time to waste. The child nodded quickly, wiping tears from their face. They rose, though their bodies shook from exhaustion. Still, they led the way through the ruins. The human followed, scanning the shattered city around them. Every broken wall and every shadow felt alive as though the ruins themselves were watching. The path was treacherous. Stones shifted beneath their feet. Twisted beams blocked their way. The child moved with small, hurried steps, looking back often to make sure the human followed. And each time their eyes met, the explorer saw the same truth. Trust, pure and unshaken. A trust that weighed heavily on his heart, for he knew if he failed, this child's hope would die with their mother. As they passed through a collapsed street, the human finally asked, Why me? Why humans? There are so many races in the stars, many with great powers and knowledge. Why would you believe a human can do what no one else can? The child slowed, their small shoulders trembling. Then, without turning, they spoke softly. "Because my mother told me," she said. "Humans carry something no other race understands. Something stronger than machines, stronger than weapons." She said, "Humans have heart." The human fell silent. Heart? It was such a simple word, yet spoken here on this dying world by a desperate child. It carried a weight greater than any science. The child turned then, tears in their glowing eyes. "She told me, if the worst ever came, I must call for a human, and now, you are here. Please, please don't let her die." The explorer's jaw tightened. He felt the burden settle on him like the weight of an entire world. This was no longer about curiosity, no longer about discovery. This was about life, about the raw bond between a mother and her child, and about the strange destiny that placed humans at the heart of it. At last, they reached a great broken hall, half buried beneath rubble. The child stopped, their body trembling as they pointed forward. "She's inside. Please hurry." The explorer stepped forward, his footsteps echoing in the hollow chamber. Shadows stretched across the cracked walls, and there, lying upon the cold ground, was a figure, tall, graceful, yet broken by pain. The alien mother, her breathing weak, her skin marked with strange wounds that pulsed with a deadly glow. The child ran to her side, falling to their knees. "Mother, I found him. I found a human." The woman's eyes flickered open, weak and tired. She looked at the human, and a faint, pained smile crossed her lips. So, the stories were true? A human answered the call. The explorer felt his breath catch. This was only the beginning. He had found them, but saving her would test him in ways he could not yet imagine. The truth revealed. The chamber was silent except for the storm outside and the broken breaths of the alien mother. Dust drifted down from cracks in the ceiling, and shadows stretched across the ruined walls like ghosts. The explorer knelt beside her, his armor scraping against stone, his eyes locked on the strange glow pulsing through her wounds. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. The marks were alive, almost breathing. Veins of burning light spreading slowly across her skin. Each flicker seemed to pull her strength away, each pulse making her chest rise weaker and weaker. The child clung to her hand, tears glowing on their cheeks, whispering words in their own language that the human could not understand. But the meaning was clear. Fear, love, desperation. The explorer touched his helmet's comms, speaking softly. "What happened to her? What caused these wounds?" The child looked up, their voice trembling. "It was the enemy, the ones who burned our cities. They carry weapons of dark fire. It does not cut the body. It cuts the spirit. No medicine of ours can stop it. It only spreads until there is nothing left." The human frowned, his gaze fixed on the glowing wounds. He had heard of weapons that poisoned blood, weapons that burned flesh. But this looked as if light itself had been twisted in two. "A weapon," he asked. "Your healers, your machines, why couldn't they stop it?" The child shook their head. "They tried everything, machines of steel and glass, medicines older than our stars, but nothing worked. They said it was not only her body that was broken, it was her soul, and no tool could reach that deep. No one except a human." The explorer's breath caught at the words, again that mystery, again that claim. Only humans. But why? The mother stirred then, her voice weak but steady enough to cut through the silence. Her eyes opened fully, locking onto the human with surprising clarity. "Come closer," she whispered. Her words carried weight, like the last pages of a story being told. The explorer leaned in, lowering his helmet so she could see his face through the visor. Her lips trembled with a faint smile. "I knew one day it would be true. The stories were not lies. The stories of your kind, humans, the ones with hearts that shine brighter than any weapon." Her voice cracked, but she forced herself to continue. "Our people, we once stood tall. But when the dark fire came, we could not fight it. It burns not just flesh, but hope. Our healers can mend wounds of the body, but they cannot mend the spirit. That is why we called across the stars. That is why my child begged for you, because humans, you are the only ones who carry the gift of resistance against despair. You are the only ones who fight even when the battle is already lost. The human froze, his mind racing. Was this myth? Was this truth? Could his kind really carry something deeper than science, deeper than strength? He looked at the glowing wounds again. The light flickered and pulsed like a fire feeding on weakness. It was not only destroying her body, it was feeding on her spirit. If that was true, then no machine could cure it, but perhaps something else could. He asked softly, "What must I do?" "Tell me and I will try." The mother's eyes closed for a moment, as if gathering her last strength. When they opened again, they burned with faint light. "You must give her your will," the child answered for her, their voice trembling. "Your strength, your heart. They say when a human touches the wounded, they do not give medicine, they give themselves, and the dark fire cannot feed on that. It is the one thing it fears. Human spirit." The explorer felt his chest tighten. How could something so simple be the answer? Yet when he looked at the mother, fading with each breath, and at the child whose glowing eyes begged him not to give up, he knew he had to try. He pulled off his glove, exposing his hand to the poisoned air. The storm's bitter wind bit against his skin, but he ignored it. Slowly, carefully, he placed his hand on the alien mother's wound. Her skin was cold, trembling. The light within the wound flared, reacting violently to his touch. The child gasped in fear, but the human did not move his hand away. The mother cried out softly, her body shaking as though the fire within her resisted. The explorer gritted his teeth, pressing his hand firmly. In that moment, he closed his eyes and thought not of fear, but of Earth, of his own mother's embrace, of the laughter of children, of strangers helping strangers in dark times. He thought of the countless moments when humans had stood together, not because they were strong, but because they refused to abandon each other. And slowly, the light within the wound flickered. The glow dimmed, the pulsing slowed. The alien mother gasped, her breath coming stronger than before. The child's eyes widened, glowing tears falling faster as they whispered, "It's working. It's working." The explorer felt his strength draining as though the fire tried to pull him down with it, but he held firm, his hand unshaking. This was not about power. It was about endurance. It was about giving every part of himself so another could rise again. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Finally, the glow faded to nothing. The wound no longer pulsed with deadly light. The alien mother lay still, her breathing deep and steady. Her eyes opened slowly, clearer than before. She looked at the human, tears shining in her gaze. You truly are different. You carry the one thing the darkness cannot defeat." The child threw their arms around the human, sobbing against his armor. "You saved her. You really saved her." The explorer sat back, exhausted, sweat dripping. From his brow he felt weak, drained, but inside his heart burned with quiet strength. He had faced something machines could not fight, and won, not with weapons, not with technology, but with something simple, something uniquely human. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside that ruined chamber, for the first time in years, there was hope. The journey to the mother. The storm outside had not rested. Wind screamed like wild beasts, carrying ash and sparks across the sky. Lightning struck the ruined towers again and again, each flash revealing a broken world too stubborn to die. The human stood at the edge of his ship with the alien child by his side, the child's small hand pointed toward the horizon. Beyond, the ruins stretched a wasteland of jagged stone, rivers of molten fire and shadows moving where no shadows should be. "She is there," the child whispered, their voice trembling. "In the old sanctuary, where the dark fire struck hardest. But the way is dangerous, the ground eats the careless and hunters. They still roam." The explorer studied the path ahead. Every instinct told him this was madness. But when he looked at the child's wide, glowing eyes, filled with fear yet burning with hope. He knew he could not hesitate. "Then we go," he said, his voice steady. "Lead me, and I will protect you." They moved into the wasteland. Ash crunched beneath their feet. The air shimmered with heat rising from cracks in the ground. Every few steps the earth shook as though something massive moved deep below. The child clung to the human's arm, guiding him carefully. "Step only where I step," they warned. "The ground is broken here. It swallows what walks without care." More than once the human watched the earth crumble away just beside them, falling into endless pits glowing with fire. It was a world built to test courage. And yet, each time the child pressed forward with trembling steps, the human followed without question. Hours passed like days in the wasteland. The storm never lifted, the air never softened, but the bond between them grew stronger. The child looked at the human with trust that no words could break, and the human began to feel as though fate itself had bound them together. Then, from the shadows of a broken ridge, movement came. The child gasped and froze. Figures crawled out from cracks in the stone, thin, twisted shapes with glowing red eyes and claws sharp as blades. Hunters, scavengers born from war and fire. They moved on all fours, circling like wolves, their growls echoing in the ruined air. The explorer pulled the child behind him, raising his weapon, but the child shook their head in panic. "No, you cannot fight them all. There are too many." The human's eyes narrowed. He knew it was true, but turning back was not an option. Not when the child's mother waited. Not when destiny called. The first hunter lunged, claws flashing in the storm's light. The explorer swung his weapon and fired, light bursting across the darkness. The beast fell, shrieking as it turned to ash, but three more took its place. The circle grew tighter, the growls grew louder. The child clutched his arm, their glowing tears streaking down their face. They will not stop. They smell weakness. They hunt forever. The human's breath came hard, his weapon burning hot in his hands. He could not win with fire alone. He needed something more. He thought of Earth's wolves, of battles fought when outnumbered, and he knew the answer was not only strength, it was will. He stood tall, raising his voice against the storm. "You will not have us." The words carried through the air, raw and fierce. The hunters slowed, their red eyes flickering with hesitation. For the first time, they saw not prey, but defiance. The human pressed forward, step by step, his voice unshaken. "You will not touch the child. You will not stop me." Something in his words cut deeper than his weapon. The hunters snarled, but their circle broke. One by one, they melted back into the shadows, hissing like steam, until only silence remained. The child looked up at him, awe shining in their glowing eyes. You made them run," they whispered. "No one makes them run. But they feared you." The human lowered his weapon, his chest heavy with breath. "Not me," he said softly. "They feared what makes us human, the will to fight, even when the fight should be lost." They moved on, deeper into the wasteland. The path grew steeper, cliffs rising like broken teeth against the storm. At times, the child stumbled, their legs weak from exhaustion, and each time, the human lifted them without hesitation, carrying them across jagged rocks and poisoned rivers. The child rested their head against his armor, whispering, "I thought humans were only stories, but you are real, and you are stronger than the stories." The words stirred something in the explorer's chest. He had always seen himself as ordinary. Yet here, on this shattered world, to this fragile child, he was hope itself. At last they reached the edge of a canyon. Far below, fire glowed in rivers like molten blood, and across the gap stood the sanctuary. A broken temple of stone, half collapsed, half buried, but still standing against the storm. That was where the mother lay. That was where the final test waited. But the canyon was wide, too wide to cross. With the storm howling around them, the child trembled, staring down into the endless fire. "We cannot pass," they whispered. "The bridge fell long ago. This is why no one came." The human studied the gap. The winds tore across it like knives. The fire below roared like a hungry beast. But he knew turning back was not possible. He knelt and placed his hands on the child's small shoulders. "Do you trust me?" The child's glowing eyes widened. "Yes, with all I am." The explorer nodded. "Then hold on." He gathered rope and hooks from his pack. His hands worked fast, steady despite the storm. The child clung to him, never letting go. And when all was ready, he leapt. Across the abyss, across the storm's fury, the rope pulled tight, the wind screamed. But he did not let go. He carried the child across inch by inch, every movement a battle, every breath a promise. Until at last, they reached the other side. The child collapsed into his arms, sobbing with relief. "You did it. We are here. We are really here." The human smiled faintly, though his body shook with exhaustion. "Not yet," he said softly. "Your mother still waits." Together they stepped into the sanctuary, the storm's roar fading behind them. The air inside was heavy with silence, and at the far end of the hall the alien mother lay in shadow, her body glowing faintly with the same deadly light as before. The child ran forward, falling to their knees beside her. "Mother, I brought him. I brought the human." The woman's eyes opened weakly, meeting the human's gaze. Her lips curved in the faintest smile. "So, you crossed the wasteland. Then perhaps the stories were right. Perhaps a human truly can save what others could not." The explorer stood tall in the silence of the sanctuary. The journey had tested his body, his will, his very spirit. And now, the real battle would begin. The mother's condition. The sanctuary was silent. Not the silence of peace, but the silence of a tomb. Dust floated in the air like faded memories, and broken beams of light fell through cracks in the roof. The alien mother lay in the shadows at the far end, her body half covered by cloth that was torn and soaked with faintly glowing blood. The human's boots echoed across the stone floor. As he approached, every step sounded too loud, too heavy, as though the very ground warned him of what waited ahead. The child knelt beside their mother, clutching her hand tightly. "Mother, I brought him. I brought the human," they whispered through tears. Their small voice cracked, breaking under the weight of hope and fear. The woman stirred, her chest rising with shallow, ragged breaths. Her eyes opened slowly, glowing faintly, their light dimmer than the child's but filled with wisdom and pain. When she looked at the human, she smiled weakly. "So, the stars heard our call, and a human has come." The explorer knelt beside her, removing his glove so his touch would not feel distant. "What happened to you?" he asked softly. Her voice was faint, but every word carried weight. "The dark, fire. Their weapon struck me when I tried to shield my child. It burns not the body alone, it burns the will. Each day it spreads deeper. Each day I feel less of myself, until nothing will remain." The child shook their head violently, glowing, tears streaking their face. "No, you will not go. The human will help you. He will save you." The mother lifted a trembling hand, brushing the child's cheek gently. "My little one, even our greatest healers could not stop it. Machines failed, medicines failed. But the stories say a human can." Her gaze locked on the explorer, sharp even through her weakness. "They say your kind carries something rare, something that no science can make. It is why I told my child to call for you, not because of your weapons, not because of your machines, but because of what you carry inside. The strength to fight when all hope is gone." The human studied the glowing wounds that spread like rivers of fire across her skin. The marks pulsed faintly, each beat slower but deeper. It was as if the darkness fed on her life, and he realized with dread that she did not have much time left. He turned to the child who clung to their mother desperately. "How long has she been like this?" The child's lips trembled. "Since the day the dark fire fell, every dawn she grew weaker, every night I thought it was the last, and now she can barely breathe." The explorer felt the weight of time pressing against him. If he hesitated, she would slip away before his eyes. And yet, He did not know what he was supposed to do. He was no healer, no doctor. He was just a man who had answered a call. Still, when he looked at the mother's dimming eyes and at the child's trembling hands, clutching hers as though holding her, soul inside he knew leaving her to die was not an option. He whispered almost to himself, "There has to be a way." The mother's breathing hitched, her body shaking. Her voice came in gasps. The fire feeds on despair, on the will that breaks. That is why our kind cannot fight it. We surrender to it without knowing. But humans are different. I felt it when you touched me before. The fire recoiled, it feared you. The human froze, his eyes widening. Feared him. No, not him, but what he represented. Human spirit. He placed his bare hand gently against the edge of the wound. The glow flared instantly, reacting violently. The mother cried out in pain, her body convulsing. The child screamed, "Stop! You're hurting her!" But the human did not pull away. Instead, he pressed his hand more firmly, his heart pounding, his jaw clenched. The fire burned against his skin as though trying to swallow him too. But he did not let go. He remembered Earth. He remembered moments of struggle. Wars fought not for power but for survival. Mothers who shielded their children. Strangers who risked themselves for others. And above all, he remembered the human truth. We do not quit. He spoke through gritted teeth, his voice steady. You are not alone. You will not be taken, not while I stand here. The glow pulsed wildly, fighting him. It felt as if it clawed at his chest, trying to rip the hope out of him. But with every beat of his heart, he pushed back. He thought of the child watching him, desperate and fragile. He thought of the mother who had sacrificed herself to protect that child, and he poured everything he had into that touch, not medicine, not science, but himself. Slowly, the fire flickered. Its furious light dimmed. The pulses grew weaker, and with every breath, the mother's chest rose steadier, stronger. The child gasped, eyes wide with wonder. It's working, you're driving it out. But the human felt his own strength fading. The fire fought not only the mother, it reached into him, it pulled at his breath, at his energy. It wanted him to fail, and yet he refused. Every second he fought harder. Every second he told himself the same truth. Humans don't give up. At last the fire gave a final flicker and then faded to nothing. The glowing wounds dimmed until only faint scars remained. The mother collapsed back, breathing deeply. Alive. The child screamed with joy, throwing their arms around the human's chest. You saved her. You really saved her. Their tears glowed brighter than ever, but now they were tears of hope, not despair. The human sat back, drained, sweat dripping from his brow. He felt as though a great weight had been ripped from him, but inside, his heart burned with a quiet fire. He had faced something no machine could fight and won. The mother opened her eyes clearer now. She reached for his hand weakly. You gave yourself to save me. Just as the stories said, your kind carries what no other does, the will to endure, the gift of heart. The explorer said nothing. There were no words strong enough for the moment. Only the silence of truth. Only the bond now shared between human and alien. The storm outside still raged. The world was still broken. But here, in the ruined sanctuary, something greater had risen. Hope. A flame carried not by machines or weapons, but by humanity. Humanity's gift. The sanctuary was heavy with silence, but it was no longer the silence of despair. It was the silence of breath, fragile, steady, alive. The alien mother lay still, her chest rising stronger now. Her wounds no longer burned with fire, only faint scars glowing like stars fading. At dawn, the child clung to the human's arm, tears streaming down their glowing cheeks. You did it. You really saved her. I knew you would. I knew a human would not fail. Their voice was soft but full of awe, the kind of awe that turns into faith. The explorer leaned back, his body heavy, every muscle weak from the struggle. He had poured himself into her survival, and though he felt drained, though his bones ached as though fire still burned inside him, his spirit held steady. It had not broken. The mother opened her eyes slowly. For the first time, her gaze was not clouded with pain. It was clear, deep, and searching. She looked at her child first, brushing trembling fingers across their face. My little one, you did not give up. Even when I told you the end was near, you called across the stars, and the stars answered. The child sobbed and held her hand tight. I believed in you, and in him. They whispered, looking at the human. I believed the stories were true, and now they are. The mother turned her gaze to the human. Her voice was weak, but it carried the weight of truth. You are not like the others. The fire could not defeat you. It fed on my people's despair. It fed on silence and surrender. But when it touched you, it found no weakness. It found resistance. It found heart. The explorer lowered his head, his hand still resting on the cold stone floor. I'm no healer, he said quietly. I'm no hero. I only did what anyone should do. I couldn't leave you to die, not when your child begged me to. Save you. The woman smiled faintly, her breath stronger now. And that is why it had to be you. That is the gift your kind carries. Not strength of body, not knowledge of machines, but the refusal to turn away. The refusal to let go. Humans fight for each other, and sometimes they fight for strangers. That is what the dark fire fears most, a will that will not break. The child looked at the human with wide, glowing eyes. Is that what makes humans different? Not power, but heart? The human met their gaze and nodded slowly. Yes, we're not the strongest, we're not the smartest. But when the world tries to take everything from us, we fight, we endure, and we hold on to each other no matter what. The child leaned closer to him, their small hands gripping his armor. Then, the galaxy needs more humans because without you, we would have lost her. The words struck the explorer harder than any storm. For the first time, he felt the weight of what this meant. This was not just about saving one mother. This was about proving that humanity carried something rare, something other civilizations could not replace with science or machines. The storm outside roared again, lightning splitting the sky. The ruined temple shook with the echo of thunder, and in that sound, the human realized something. This battle was only the beginning. The mother, still weak but alive, slowly sat up. With her child's help, her hand reached out, trembling but steady enough to touch the human's arm. You have given me back my life, she whispered, and you have given my child back their hope. But more than that, you have given proof that the stories of humans were true. The human tilted his head. Stories? The mother nodded weakly. Yes. Old stories. Whispers told among the stars of a race that endured, a race that was not the most powerful, nor the most wise, but the most stubborn, the most unwilling to surrender. Many thought those stories were myths, but I knew, and now my child knows, that they were real. The child's voice broke the silence. Then humans are not just people, they are light. The human's chest tightened at the words. He wanted to deny it. He wanted to say he was only one man, only one ordinary explorer. But the truth was undeniable. In this place, at this moment, he had been the difference between life and death, between despair and hope, and that was the gift of humanity. Not perfection, not power, but the ability to stand when everything else fell, the ability to give when nothing was left. He rose slowly, helping the mother lean against the stone wall. You're not safe here, he said firmly. This world is broken. It will swallow anyone who stays too long. Come with me. Both of you. I'll get you to safety. The child's eyes lit with sudden joy. You mean, we can leave? We can go with you? The human nodded. If you want. You've already trusted me this far, and I don't intend to let that trust break. The mother's eyes softened. To leave this world. Yes, perhaps it is time. If the darkness returns, my child should not grow here among ashes. They should grow where light still lives. The child clung to the human's side. Then we will go. Wherever you go, we will follow, because you saved us. Because you showed me that humans are real. The explorer felt something shift in his heart. He had begun this journey as one man, alone in the silence of space. But now he was no longer alone. Two lives now depended on him. Two hearts now believed in him, and perhaps through them others would learn what he had shown here. That humanity's gift was not a myth, it was truth. They prepared to leave the sanctuary. The storm's roar outside was no weaker, the wasteland still, waited with its hunters and shadows. But now the human walked not only with purpose, he walked with proof. The child held his hand tightly, their small steps quick to match his own. The mother leaned on his other side, fragile but alive. And together, they faced the storm. The explorer looked out at the shattered horizon, and in the lightning's flash he whispered to himself, "Only a human could answer their cry. And only humanity can carry this gift." The words were not pride, they were promise. For in that moment, he understood something greater. The galaxy did not fear humanity's weapons. It did not fear humanity's science. It feared humanity's heart. Because heart was what turned despair into hope, darkness into light, and endings into beginnings, and so, through storm and ruin, one human walked with an alien child and their mother, carrying not just lives but a truth the galaxy could no longer deny. Resolution and message. The storm had not ended. Winds still roared across the wasteland, tearing dust and ash into endless spirals. Lightning split the sky in furious cracks, and thunder rolled like 1,000 drums. But within the ruined sanctuary, something greater than the storm had already happened. A life had been saved. Hope had been reborn. The human walked slowly, guiding the alien mother with one arm while the child clung tightly to the other. Step by step, they crossed back through the broken halls, through fallen pillars and shattered stone. The air outside was sharp with smoke, but no longer felt suffocating. The child looked up at the human, glowing eyes bright despite exhaustion. "You carried her back from the fire," they whispered. "You did what no one else could do. You gave her life again." The explorer glanced down at them, his face shadowed inside the helmet. "I didn't do it alone," he said quietly. "You never gave up either. You called to the stars when everyone else had turned away. That's courage too, that's heart." The child's small hand tightened on his. "I only had hope, but you turned it into truth." The mother walked slowly, leaning on him for support. Her body weak, but her eyes clear now. Her voice was low, carried by the storm, but firm. "You must understand something, human. This is not just about me. This is not just about my child. What you did here will echo beyond this world because now we know the stories were true." The human frowned slightly. "Stories?" The mother nodded, her voice trembling but steady with belief. "Across the galaxy, whispers told of humans, of a race not feared for power, not respected for wisdom, but remembered for their defiance, for their refusal to fall when darkness came. Many thought these stories were myths, legends told to give hope where none remained. But now, I have seen it with my own eyes, and my child has lived it." The child's glowing tears returned, but they were no longer of despair. They were tears of joy. "They will believe me now, when I tell them a human came. When I tell them a human saved my mother, they will believe me." The explorer paused at the edge of the sanctuary, staring out at the storm. His ship stood far across the broken ground, a lonely shadow waiting in the distance. But what felt more distant still was the life he had left before. A life of silence, wandering, searching without purpose. That silence was gone now. In its place stood something heavier, a responsibility. The mother spoke again as they walked. "Do you see it now, human? Why the dark fire fears you? It does not fear your weapons or your ships, it fears the fire inside you, the fire that refuses to die even when all else is lost. That is your gift. That is humanity's gift." The words struck the explorer deeper than any wound. He had not thought of himself as special. He had not thought of humanity as more than fragile wanderers in an endless galaxy. But here, in this broken world, he understood. It was not strength that made them different. It was not knowledge. It was will. It was the stubborn, unyielding refusal to let go, the refusal to surrender, the refusal to stop fighting when the fight seemed lost. They crossed the wasteland again. The hunters watched from shadows, but none dared to approach. The storm clawed at them, but they pressed forward. The child stumbled once, their legs weak, and the human carried them without hesitation. The mother whispered prayers of thanks with every step, and at last they reached the ship, standing tall against the winds like a lone guardian. The human guided them inside, sealing the door behind them. The roar of the storm faded, replaced by the steady hum of the engines. For the first time in many days, the child smiled, a small, pure smile that lit their strange, glowing eyes. "We are safe now," they whispered. "We are safe because of you." The explorer sat them down, checking the mother's breathing once more. Her chest rose strong, no longer broken by fire. Her eyes closed in exhaustion, but not in surrender. She was alive. She would live. The child leaned against the human. "Thank you for answering my call. No one else came. Only you." The explorer placed a hand gently on the child's shoulder. "You never gave up. That's why I came. That's why we both survived." They lifted into the storm, the ship breaking through, clouds of fire and ash. The world below shrank, a scarred land left behind, and above the stars stretched wide and endless, the same stars where the child's desperate voice had traveled, the same stars that now carried a new truth. The mother opened her eyes briefly as the stars shone through the window. "Your kind will change the galaxy," she whispered. "Not because of power, but because of heart, because when the universe cries, it is the humans who will answer." Her eyes closed again, but now in peace. The child watched her breathe, calm and safe, then turned to the human with awe. "You are proof. You are the story. You are what the galaxy needs to remember." The explorer looked out at the stars. His reflection stared back at him in the glass. He was only one man, but now he carried, more than himself, he carried a truth, a flame, a gift. And as the stars shone brighter, he whispered words that echoed through the silence. Only a human could answer their cry, and only humanity can carry the gift of hope. The child's hand slipped into his, small and warm. The bond was sealed, not of blood, not of race, but of trust, of heart, and somewhere in the endless galaxy, the dark fire stirred. It knew what had happened here, it knew what had been proven, and for the first time the darkness feared.